The 2024 NFL Draft is now over. Where do the Jets go from here? They've made 7 draft selections. They picked up a couple of undrafted free agents. How strong was this draft class? We're going to dissect everything from the weekend that was on a Monday edition of Football with Faria.
It's time for Football with Faria.
You got to get the offense right, and you got to be able to be aggressive. They put up 14 against the secondary. That is driving me up a freaking wall right now.
Now here's your host, Nick Faria.
All righty, Monday edition, Football with Faria. Appreciate all of you guys for jumping on for the first time. Welcome. If you guys are returning, welcome back. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot of different discussions that need to be had because it wasn't just the draft that happened. New York made a monumental trade that affects the 2024 roster we're going to get to in a little bit. John Franklin Myers no longer here. He goes to the Denver Broncos. We're going to just dissect all of that. And, of course, if you guys want to call in, the link in the YouTube description down below is available. I want to make sure I have that all for you guys, so bear with me 1 second. Okay, we're all good there. Good. Perfect. So let's talk about the draft. Let's talk about the draft grades that the Jets have to be given because New York was very, very busy. They did not have a second-round pick, and yet they still were able to trade up for the receiver that they wanted. They traded back and picked up a couple of late-round selections that turned out to be pretty substantial. Pretty damn substantial. We're going to get to all of that in a little bit, but first, for those of you guys that have jumped on, let me know what you guys think of the Jets draft. Do you guys have any questions about it? Do you guys have any thoughts or concerns about where the Jets are at? We're going to try to answer all of that today. But to me, and I said this in a tweet before, I feel it's consistent with what I've been saying throughout the weekend. The Jets knocked this out of the park. The Jets absolutely knocked the 2024 draft out of the park, and mostly because they didn't overspend on anything. When they traded up for Malachi Corley, they didn't give massive assets up. They really didn't. It was a third-round pick swap and a late-round pick that they got from a trade down with the Minnesota Vikings. There's very few things the Jets really screwed up here. And you want to look at it. If you really want to compare it to other teams, I think the Jets had the best draft of the AFC East. I think the Jets had one of the better drafts in the AFC in general. They picked up a transcendent offensive line prospect in Olu Fashanu. They traded up for a receiver that was number 4 on their draft boards. They got a bruiser of a running back in Braylon Allen. Their quarterback of the future in Jordan Travis. And then, in the later portion of the draft, they picked up 2 high upside players in the secondary. They could not have done any better if you tried. People are going to be upset because they did not get the receiver in the first round. But do we understand now why that wasn't necessary? Do we understand why it wasn't completely a necessary thing that the Jets draft a receiver in the first round? Consider this. Consider this for you guys. When the Jets made their pick at 11 and traded down, if they took Brock Bowers and then in the third round went with their offensive lineman that they were looking for, or let's say they went with Malachi Corley still. Let's say they still stuck with Corley. Do you guys understand how worse off this offensive line would be right now? Olu Fashanu is a transcendent player. He is going to be your left tackle of the future. But the other takeaway that we need to have is that he's a great locker room guy. He's willing to play other positions if it means it's going to help the Jets out in the long term. That's a fundamental piece. It's a fundamental piece to their draft stock. Then you add in a guy like Malachi Corley, who is a yak king. He can win in passing routes. The only reason why no one saw it is because Western Kentucky didn't ask him to do that. Just because someone doesn't put it on film right away in college doesn't mean he can't become that in the pros. The perfect example, of course, is what's his name from San Francisco, Brandon Ayuk. We talk about what Malachi Corley can become in terms of Deebo Samuel. But in reality, to me, the receiver that he can become in terms of upside is Brandon Ayuk because he can develop into a route running fiend. He's already sure a catcher. He's already good with the ball in his hands. We all know that. But if he can add a couple of routes to his repertoire, this is an all-pro receiver in the third round and who fell to the Jets as a victim of circumstance. There was nothing Malachi Corley put on tape that was deserving of a third-round pick. The reason why he fell to the third round is because there were 14 offensive players taken consecutively to start the NFL draft. And when that happened, defensive players just fell off the board immediately. Layatu Latu, Jared Verse, Quinion Mitchell. These guys that should have gone in the teens were now pushed off into the 20s, and that pushed the entire receiving class into the second round. And then there was the run on offensive linemen. Kingsley Sumayata, Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton. These late first, early second round picks that weren't going to be available to the Jets in the third round started flying off the board midway through, and it gave the Jets the opportunity to trade up with the Carolina Panthers for Malachi Corley. This was a no-brainer, guys. There's nothing you can look at this draft and say the Jets really screwed this up. And I will say, and I'm going to say this right now, the best move of the entire weekend was not a trade that resulted in a player being moved. The best move out of any move the Jets made this draft cycle was the trade up, or the trade down with the Miami Dolphins to pick up a third-round pick in 2025. That trade by Joe Douglas is so important to what the Jets are going to do this season because now they have 2 third-round picks. Now, people are going to ask me, Nick, why do we care about a third-round pick? This player isn't always going to be dependable right away. And there are times where that's the case. But when we talk about a future third-round pick, a 2025 third-round pick, what we're really talking about is trade capital. Trade capital. Because if you look at teams who are going to be in the running for a championship next year, what's the one consistent theme all of them are going to have? By the time the trade deadline comes, everyone's going to be aggressive. And if you don't have the draft capital, you are not going to be major players at improving the roster where it's needed. The Jets last season learned that the hard way because they didn't have a second-round pick and they only had 1 third-round pick. So pickings were slim to improve the 2023 team. Pickings were very, very slim. But now, going into the 2024 season, you've got added ammo. You've got some added juice to where if you need another run stopper or if you need another pass rusher or a player goes down in the secondary or you need another receiver, you can give an offer that teams aren't going to be able to refuse. A third-round pick is no short change. And if the Jets are willing to give up a third-round pick for a high-quality player to help them out for a playoff run in 2024, you know what that is? That's not, that's a solid move. It's not to be overly exaggerated. That's a great move. It's one of the more important moves the Jets made this draft cycle. Because we can argue about Corley and Fashanu and Travis and Braylon Allen. But if the third round pick at the trade deadline gets you Cortland Sutton or another receiver, I'm not saying that Sutton's going to be the player because it sounds like he could be on the move to Pittsburgh. But if it's Sutton, if it's another receiver, if it's an offensive lineman or a corner, that third round pick is going to get the deal done. It's so important that you guys understand this. Because people argue, and the one consistent theme that I heard on day 3, the final day, was, man, Joe Douglas really screwed up. The trade for John Franklin Myers only netted them a 6th-round pick. It makes no sense to trade him, even with Hassan Reddick needing a new deal, because you need a run stuffer. And then it was compounded by the team drafting Isaiah Davis around after they took Braylon Allen. Davis, a power runner, good underneath, probably going to be competing in that 4th running back spot. And everyone was saying, why did we trade John Franklin Myers? And why did we take Isaiah Davis? And all these things. Why did we double dip at running back and not offensive line? Mahogany was there. The offensive lineman from Boston College was available. They didn't take him. But again, and I continue to say this, guys, if you're looking for the ultra positive, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to tell you when the Jets screw up. I'm also not going to be the ultra negative guy who says it's an embarrassment and I couldn't sleep because I can't believe the Jets took Olu Fashanu and not a receiver or Brock Bowers. I think most of you on Twitter know who I'm talking about. But I'm going to be somewhere in the middle. And objectively speaking, the most important move the Jets made was picking up a 2025 third-round pick with the Miami Dolphins trade that allows them to get a high-impact player when they are competing for a playoff spot this season. Because when I look at this roster top to bottom, especially after the draft, I look at this roster top to bottom, there are very few teams in the NFL in general that have more talent than the New York Jets. At every position. At every position, the Jets have an all-pro player. In the secondary, Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter. In the linebacker room, of course, you've got your two, Quincy and CJ. Defensive line, you now have Hassan Reddick and Quinnen Williams. Offensive line, I think Elijah Vera-Tucker is an all-pro player. Tyron Smith certainly is as well. At running back, you've got Breece Hall, you've got Rodgers, and you've got Garrett Wilson. Every position group has an all-pro player. There are few teams in the NFL that have that. Very few teams. I think Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Kansas City are probably the more complete teams than the Jets right now. But that's it. That's it. I'd put the Jets roster up against the Baltimore Ravens. I'd put the Jets roster up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I put it against the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins. Listen, the Miami Dolphins had a good draft, objectively. And the Bills had a good draft too. Keon Coleman, I thought, was a great pickup to start the second round. But this is no contest, people. This is no contest. The Jets roster is by far the best in the AFC East. And I think it's the second best roster in the AFC. I'm not going to question the Chiefs. I'm just not. We've learned our lesson here. And if the Jets were to get to the AFC title game and lose to the Chiefs, this is a phenomenal season and should not be seen as a failure. And both Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas should be back because there's no shame in losing to the next dynasty, at least right now. But you look at this draft, and everyone will tell you, yes, the Jets had a good draft. I don't think it's just that they had a good draft. I think they had a terrific draft when we talk about the assets they had going in and the assets they have coming out. Olu Fashanu could very well start 3 or 4 games this season, and he is a far better overall prospect, a far better player to trust than Carter Warren or Mekhi Becton or Max Mitchell. Malachi Corley as a number 3 receiver, a number 3 option in the passing game, is a phenomenal value pick. with the 65th overall selection. It's a phenomenal value pick because you don't cost anything. There's nothing going into the 2025 draft that you have given up for Malachi Corley. There's nothing. And you got him in the third round. A second-round player you got in the third round. I would argue Braylon Allen, the running back out of Wisconsin, is probably a third-round talent, and you got him in the fourth. And then you want to throw in Jordan Travis, who, if not for his injury, if not for the gruesome leg injury that he suffered, was going to be a first-round pick. People don't understand that. People look at Jordan Travis and say, no, he would have gone in the second round. The Dallas Cowboys, the Detroit Lions, the Seattle Seahawks, these are teams that were picking in the 20s. And I think they would have run to the table if a healthy Jordan Travis was available. And you got him in the fifth round. You've got your future quarterback in the fifth round. Simply because he broke his leg. Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, I spoke with them, and reporters spoke with them over the weekend after the draft. And the one thing that they tied to in this entire conversation with Jordan Travis was that he has over 30 years of quarterback experience behind him now, or in front of him in this instance. Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor combined over 30 years of NFL playing experience, over 30 years of starting playing experience. Do you understand what that's going to do for Jordan Travis? I don't even think you're going to need to be able to draft one. I don't think the need of drafting a quarterback early in the draft is going to happen anymore. I really don't. I'm very, very high on Jordan Travis. And yes, we have to see what happens post his recovery. Is he the same lethal player? But he is deadly accurate. Very good anticipation. The problem is his arm strength. But we have seen quarterbacks that fall in the draft that may not have the strongest arm, but are very accurate and have very good anticipation. And they have long careers. Obviously, the top one I'm thinking of is Tom Brady. I'm not saying Jordan Travis is Tom Brady, but what I am saying is his athleticism, his anticipation, and his accuracy is far more important if he can throw a football, over throwing a football far. Sorry. The Jets objectively in this draft knocked it out of the park. Knocked it out of the park. I give them an A-. My official grade has been, will continue to be an A-, because I know they worked hard to get into the second round, and they still got the receiver they wanted, and they still picked up an all-pro caliber offensive tackle, and they still picked up a power running back and their quarterback of the future and secondary help. The difference, and the one thing that I will hold against him, and it's purely subjective, the Isaiah Davis pick was unnecessary. And I think a lot of people agree with that. The Isaiah Davis pick was unnecessary when you have Braylon Allen, but also when you could have drafted another offensive lineman. And people will look at it and say, well, Nick, if you think about it, the Jets have 9 offensive linemen on the roster right now that you can expect to be on the opening day team, the 53-man roster. Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, Elijah Vera-Tucker. Those are your starting 5. That's your starting 5. But then you have Olu Fashanu, Max Mitchell, Carter Warren, and Wes Schweitzer. That's 9. There's few teams that put 10 offensive linemen on the 53-man roster. I think the Jets this year will be one of the few for obvious reasons. But that 10th player could have been Christian Mahogany. It could have been another offensive lineman. And they just chose not to. And it's completely subjective because Davis could be a really good running back. And this running back room could be the best the Jets have had since 2010. It certainly could happen that way. but you need an offensive lineman and you need depth. And that's why I take a little bit of the grade off the Jets right now. We're talking about a perfect draft class. I wouldn't say the Jets draft class was perfect, but it was damn freaking good. It was damn good. I'll tell you that much. And late Jet fan, I completely agree. This is a perfect comment. When we are nitpicking about a 5th round pick for a 3rd guard or a 3rd running back, things are going well. I completely agree. The Jets are in a rare situation where we are nitpicking a 5th round guard over an offensive lineman for depth purposes as the 10th and last player on the 53-man roster. Great comment. I want to make sure I get to everyone. If you guys have any questions, like I said, feel free to jump in. If you guys want to call in, link in the YouTube description down below. This is Lowe's with a comment. That second running back was the only head scratcher for me. Interested in your take on why. Mentioned it already. Thank you. Dane, our good friend Dane here is going to be helping us out with this show for a little bit with a great comment here. I like to add Aaron to this class. And in ways, you kind of have to add Aaron Rodgers to this class because that's your 2nd round pick. And your 2nd round pick being Aaron Rodgers, a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers at that, not damn bad. Not too bad either. Not too bad at all. Something to think about, guys. Something to think about. Dane, thanks for the comment. We got a call in from Johnny. Johnny, how's it been going? Everyone's got to be excited, yes?
Dude, I'm like ecstatic. I'm excited for the draft. I mean, you guys killed it, man. The 2 corners, dude. Holy crap. Like,
I wanted to save that for later, but yeah, we did.
Like Quinyon Mitchell, the only reason I really started looking at him is because of Dano and seeing you and Dano. But Dano really go look at him and he jumps off the tape for you. I mean, the measurements that he has, how tall he is and all that. And then getting Cooper DeJean as well, another freak.
Future, yeah. Kyle Hamilton 2.0.
Literally. So then you got the signing now with Mackay, right? I mean,
yeah, I like that signing a lot. I'll talk about it more, but I do like it.
So, you guys killed it too. Low key had a really, really good draft, right? The Jets, I mean, I'm happy, dude. It's everything that we wanted as a franchise. We wanted the left tackle, the insurance policy that everybody kept talking about, right? But then everybody got amnesia and completely forgot that we've had this injury bug forever and a day. I've been pounding the table for Malachi Corley, right? Your Debo Samuel, right? Because when you were talking to me about that, I was like, holy crap. Like, if we wouldn't have gotten this guy, that probably would have happened. That trade would have came on, but we got a younger version of him, And then we got Braylon Allen. Again, had no clue who this kid was. Dano, once again, plugged me in. He's like, Johnny, this dude's a monster, and I know he was pretty big on Garendo as well, and same here, right? But a lot of people had this kid up on their as their like top running back.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we literally got Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon all over again, but younger and better versions of them, even though I still think Aaron Jones is super good. But we'll see. The Izzy thing, what's Izzy going to be? I think he's going to be a specialist, to be honest with you.
Has to be.
He's done it in the past. He has the speed, this new type of scheme that they're going to be having in the special teams. It just makes sense. Again, JD is playing chess when everybody's playing hangman and they're just hanging himself. I loved it, man. Then everybody's all pissed off about the later picks. And I get it, but what the hell does it matter at that point?
It's a wonderful argument to have. Oh, we didn't get this guy. We didn't get that guy. If you're arguing over late round picks, you had a damn good draft. You had a damn
Exactly.
good draft.
And the undrafted guys that we got, right? The
I
kid
wanna
from
get to those.
the kid from Miami, he's a beast.
I'm going to get to those in a little bit because I wanted to bring that up as my second point. I wanted to take some calls. If there's one thing I think we can give the Jets credit for, or at least give them some breathing room, it's eyeing undrafted free agent talent and letting these guys develop. Right? It has to be what they've done with Bryce Huff, what they've done with Tony Adams. All these guys were undrafted free agents that developed into quality players. In the case of Bryce Huff, a Pro Bowl caliber player. We have to think that that's going to happen again because that's what they've consistently done for the last 4 years.
And Nick, I mean, even the guys that we brought in that are new, they don't have to be that guy from the very beginning.
Yeah.
They can sit back, learn from the best. You got a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you got possibly one of the really, really well backup quarterback, QBT, and Tyrod Taylor that he's been put in any position if he's excelled in that, right? And then you got Jordan Travis. You don't know. I mean, dude, imagine this kid becomes a serviceable quarterback and, you know, people are saying that he's a comp to a Jacoby Brissett. I would take it.
I think he's a little bit better. I think he's going to be better than Brissett. I think he's going to be better than Brissett. And I think it's going to be a lot better because he's got the accuracy that Brissett never really had.
Correct.
The arm's a problem. The arm strength's a problem, but you can grow with arm strength. The anticipation's got to be there. He's still only 23 years old.
And that's exactly what all these guys that we got are young as crap, man. And the culture that they speak of and how the loyalty aspect of it, and they're not going to be cancers. I hate saying the word cancer in the locker room. I'm sorry. These like crappy players, crappy people, right? They're not inside the damn locker room at all. And even the Stiggers thing. I mean, the more and more I read about it, you start falling in love with this kid even more, and you're like, it's Wayne Corbett to me all over again.
It's
right?
It's right there for you, man. His story's amazing.
And Olu
as well. I'm going to give you one last question, Johnny. Your draft grade for the Jets today, obviously knowing it can change in a couple of years, but your draft grade today for the team.
It's an A because
Flat A?
It's the only reason I give it an A and not an A plus, right, is because I think that we could have maybe gotten another receiver that were there for us later on, but that's me being picky at this point. It's but it's an A because for me, after the 5th round, I could give two shits who we get.
You have no idea who you're going to get. Jason Kelce was a 6th rounder. There is a tweet in Philadelphia's archives, the Eagles archive, that says we have drafted Jason Kelce with the 211th overall pick, and they have Kelce misspelled.
Yeah.
The greatest center of all time. His name is misspelled on his draft tweet.
Nick, one question for you, though, right? Because you've been covering the Jets for such a long time now, right?
It's only been a year, man.
Dude, it's going like that, though, bro, right? What is another piece that you could say that we could have gotten better as a team? Like, what's a position you think that we should have maybe addressed?
It's got to be safety, right? It's got to be. It's the only position left.
Even with what we have now, Tony Adams, Chuck Clark.
I think the safety room is the starting caliber. It's just throw $6 million at Justin Simmons and call it a day. And then it's, okay, where's the weakness? Where's the actual hole in the roster? And there is none. Because people will say, well, they can't stop the run. And then I will say, well, yeah, you can't stop the run. But that's why they brought in Fotu from Arizona. And that's why you've got Michael Clemens on the roster to be the next JFM, to develop into the next JFM. People will look and say, well, this will mean that Hassan Reddick's going to take a lot of snaps. That's not what it's going to mean. The JFM trade, what it means is this is Will McDonald and Michael Clemens getting more snaps than they could have ever dreamed of going into this season.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, man. Appreciate it, man.
Talk to you. Yeah, so listen, I do want to talk about the undrafted list before I go to New York Jets, Florida here. So I know he's waiting patiently. I'm going to make this one really quick. But again, Leonard Taylor, the undrafted free agent out of Miami, probably should have gone in the 4th round. Probably absolutely should have gone in the 4th round. Just ridiculous that he fell to the undrafted ranks. I think he is going to be phenomenal. And then you've got this guy, Braden McGregor, the defensive lineman from Michigan, the pass rusher from Michigan, on a national championship Michigan Wolverines defense. I think we should give Joe Douglas. There are things people will question about Joe Douglas at all times. Why did we take a running back over an offensive lineman? All these different things. When it comes to undrafted free agents, shut up and let him do his work, because he knows what he's doing, especially when it comes to this group, because he has found some absolute gems. Absolute gems. All right, we're going to bring on New York Jets, Florida now. How's it going, man? Great to see you.
Going great. Everything's great. Congratulations on the Eagles' secondary draft. That's a very solid.
Appreciate it.
Right there. I'm thinking. I obviously agree with most of what you said about the Jets, but I'm thinking more about the strategy when and if we make the playoffs. We have to play these cold weather games, maybe on the road, including in Kansas City, where if you cannot score with the Chiefs, which, we're going to ask our defense to shut down Mahomes, maybe we can out-physical them and do the...
Which you've done. You've done that.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So you get your 200... I have a flyer on me. You get your 240-pound rookie running back in there, and you slam him in there, a la Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And you see what the Chiefs have, or whoever you're playing has, to stop that, and then you play action off of that. I mean, if we're in these cold weather games too, you may have elements to deal with: wind, rain, snow. So your offense may not be as efficient. Although Rodgers has been pretty efficient, except for those Arctic conditions in Lambeau that he played in, which was 30 below, whatever it was.
And you're probably not going to get that in that life.
Definitely not. So I'm happy with the draft. There's been a lot of criticisms about taking back-to-back running backs, but I trust they know what they're doing.
That's the thing, guys, and I'm glad for I'll actually, before I go into that point, to back it up, your overall grade for this team in the draft.
Very, very professory question. You're a professor, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always big on that.
I don't want to overhype it too much. I'll give him a B+ until further notice, and just take it from there. And if everyone's healthy, and I personally think the best pick of the draft might be the running back out of Wisconsin.
He's phenomenal.
When it comes down to a player like that you would need to spell Breece Hall, and not overuse him much, and kind of, like I said, manage some of these games. So you may have to close out games, in the 4th quarter, where you're running the ball and draining the clock. And then we had issues with short yardage. We couldn't make a third or one. Part of that was Zach, obviously, when we have no offense or offensive line with Zach. I mean, we tried a few gadget plays, and when you're keying on Breece Hall as being the only person out of the running game, how much more can you rely on him?
No, 100%. I appreciate the call. New York Jets, Florida. Appreciate it. Have a great day, man. Listen, Braylon Allen is an impactful player right away. He is, and I said this on JetCast this afternoon, he is what Dalvin Cook was supposed to be. The guy that can spell Hall for a drive, yet still pick up 4 to 5 yards a carry. Just lower your head, get down the field. That's what Dalvin Cook was supposed to be, and he never was. With Braylon Allen, that's what you get. That's his MO. And the most important thing about Braylon Allen's game isn't the fact that he's a power runner. It's the fact that he was one of the best pass blocking running backs of the entire draft. as the youngest player in the draft. Braylon Allen doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires because he's the youngest player, and he comes in already efficient, dominant, excellent in pass protection. He's going to play right away. He's going to get downs right away, simply because he can pass protect, and you don't have to force Breece Hall into that situation. 100%. Braylon Allen is a great pick for where it was. It was a great pick. And then you have the likes of Jordan Travis and Quantez Stiggers. The people will talk about Stiggers, the story, and I love his story. I'm going to implore you guys, look at his story if you haven't already. But with him specifically, he's a player, if he develops in the way he can, because he is an excellent talent that only fell to the 6th round because of circumstance, he can be, and he could potentially grow in to a starting caliber corner. And if that were to happen, you don't need to pay DJ Reed anymore. You've got Brandon Eccles. You pay Michael Carter. All of a sudden, you trust Stiggers to play opposite Sauce Gardner. That secondary is still elite, and they're still very young. I can't look at any pick, maybe outside of Isaiah Davis, and I say, wow, that was a great pick. It's a great pick. Braylon Allen, Corley, Fashanu, Travis, even Key, Mr. Irrelevant. It's a safety, a developmental safety. If there's one thing that the Jets have shown and should be given credit for, it's developing defensive talent. It's a no-brainer that this draft was knocked out of the park for the Jets. Got another call in. It's my good buddy, Dano. Dane, you've got a new podcast. What is it, The Late Show featuring Dano? Yes?
It is, man. Like you, I've been sadly unemployed for a few months. Dude, if it wasn't for the Jets content, I don't think I'd have already gone crazy. But what I will say is, like, there's not a whole lot of weekend content and late night content, so I think I'm gonna sprinkle in on Friday nights. You know, hopefully get you on the show, man, soon.
Absolutely, it's always a yes, always a yes.
Okay, my man. As far as the draft, I think Johnny might have mentioned it. I was big on Garendo. I really was, and at 129, I was screaming for him. Literally, we let San Fran come up and grab him at that same spot, and then we took Braylon Allen. And then I looked like in the Beast, Brugler's 300 pages, and like the one thing that sticks out to me about Allen is gap scheme runner.
Yeah.
And very high upside pass protection. So like that sold me. But I think, and I told Asman this, I said, I think a good note is if we didn't let San Francisco get their guy, then they may be a little less inclined to part with a different weapon that they might not, you know, hey, they got Pearsall and Garendo now. Like, how many touches? Dude, they got to. They've got to.
I don't know if the Jets are going to be the destination now. And that's kind of my point. I would say the 3rd round pick is certainly going to help them in negotiations. But when it comes to a Debo, when it comes to an Ayuk, it sounds like, and I say sounds like, it may change, but it sounds like Pittsburgh is more in on those guys than any other team right now.
And I think they could afford him long term a little 100%. Better. But, you know, if it was just going to be that 3rd rounder that was actually a 4th from us, I would probably do it just as a rental. And, you know, that might be a little too all in. But I think it'll matter with what we do about DJ Reed. I think that is the big thing staring us in the face. Like, $15 million cap hit. I think it's 4th on the team. Do you extend him? You know, if you extend him, I think it's small and it's done before Sauce. But like, that's the only way we would. I think that's the only way we could get that much more cap space. You know, I don't think we're going to restructure Quinnen or anything, but Have you heard anything about Reed?
Nothing as of yet, but I think the one thing that we're all keeping an eye on is which corner they go after first. Is it going to be Carter that gets the extension, or is it going to be Reed? And again, I still maintain consistent flow that it's going to be Carter over Reed because it has to be a drafted player, the top slot corner in the draft. You cannot let that go out the door.
You can't, and I think it was either Connor Rogers or it was Trevor Sikkema, but one of them said, smaller corners in their third contract do not fare well. And while I love DJ, I mean, when Michael Carter's, 25, 26, that's my guy.
You gotta give him that second contract. It has to be.
One last thing I wanted to say. I watched a little bit of Asman through all his coverage, and I saw he had Corbett on. And there's one thing that I came away and just has been gnawing at me ever since. And you can see it right there, man. Maybe you can help, but we got to get that 80 retired, man, because he mentioned it, and you could tell it kind of retire 80, man. Let's start a movement. Retire that jersey.
Again, so I have to be a reporter. I have to be objective. Growing up, I had no idea who Corbett was because I grew up in Rhode Island and I grew up an Eagles fan, so I had no idea. It was only when I came to Hofstra that I learned about Corbett and I learned about Colston, and then I learned that Jets connection. If it's not the number retirement, because I do think that NFL teams nowadays, they sort of overdo the retirement numbers. No player can wear this number ever again. He should be in the Ring of Honor if he isn't already. I don't know if he is or not because I don't know the history of the team yet. Is he?
I believe he is, and no other player has worn 80 since then, so I don't know if it's just something that they have like a time.
It's the Randall Cunningham move. Philadelphia, there's not a single Philadelphia quarterback that has worn 12 or a single quarterback that has worn number 9 since Cunningham and Foles left. So it's essentially, it's a quiet retirement, if you will. But ultimately, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I like what the Dallas Cowboys do, where it's, if we give you a certain number, there is a history behind it that you must match. And the one number that I'm talking about is 88. You had Pearson, you had Irvin, you gave it to Dez, and now you gave it to CeeDee Lamb. It makes a lot of sense to me for teams to continue to adopt that and say, if you are 80, you have to play like Corbett, and you must be the top receiver or the top playmaker, the heart of the team overall. Not saying like that's wrong. Not saying if Corbett wants his number retired, it's certainly something that can be done. But wouldn't it be more impactful if 80 was used on a particular player? Say, and I'm again paraphrasing, of course, not saying it's going to happen. If we gave Garrett Wilson, the Jets gave Garrett Wilson number 80 after Corbett, wouldn't that mean something that 80 has a starting point and it was Corbett that started it that makes this whole thing more special?
I think Michael Irvin had a really cool quote on that where he said it's like he would never want his number retired because every time Dez or CD catch a ball, you're thinking of all the 88s that came before them. And that is so cool. It is. But at the same time, like, use the number or don't, like, either.
That's, yes.
But no.
I'll rectify my statement. Whether I think he should or not is irrelevant. Make a decision. Make a decision. Either put it in action or retire. It's the same thing with Cunningham. Quite frankly, and I've made this point before, I think Randall Cunningham's a very overrated quarterback. In terms of Eagles history, I think he's an overrated quarterback. We all liked him because, the scrambler, he did it in ways no one knew before. All that. Perfectly fine.
Yep.
But McNabb, Foles, Wentz to a degree, they've all played better than Cunningham at a certain point in their career.
Agreed. Culpepper, man. Minnesota, I don't know if I'm crazy, but I thought Culpepper was way better than Cunningham there.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
But,
right.
hey.
You're great. I've asked everyone who's called in. You're great on the Jets draft.
Well, okay. So there's part of his capital that went elsewhere. So like, how do you not include that part of our budget went to acquiring Aaron Rodgers and part of our budget is still unspent? So like, for me, judging just what we drafted, I would say teetering between B and B plus. But if Rodgers has a hell of a year, A plus already. But then you also say, what if you trade that fourth, which is a third, and you get that last piece? Like, you have two arrows that could both get you to A plus with the budget he had.
This is why I think it's an A, or at least an A
Yeah.
minus, because
That's why
that
you
third
have to
round
take
pick,
those.
man.
You have to take those into account. How can you not? You only judge, okay, he was missing a second, he was missing that fourth. Like, that's half your draft. Like, you have to weigh those. You have to.
100%. Dane, appreciate the call. Make sure you guys check out his work. He's going to be helping us as well on Football with Faria as well. So we appreciate all the help that he can give us as well. So appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you another time.
Thank you.
So we've got about 7 minutes left. I am going to have a final take, but I want to talk about and look through some of the questions. Lake Jet fan brought this one up before. He's asked here, you really see Nate Herbig getting released? It's not me that said it. There was a report from a Pittsburgh Steelers reporter saying Nate Herbig could be released because Pittsburgh drafted a center and offensive guard in the first few rounds of the NFL draft. And if Nate Herbig gets released, and I've said this today already, the Jets should absolutely call, because if you're looking for 10 offensive linemen and you sign Nate Herbig to a deal, there's your backup left guard without having to worry about your right. That's a phenomenal value signing for essentially free, because he's not going to cost a lot. Nate Herbig would make a hell of a lot of sense if that's the case. Going through all the questions. Oh, I see one from Scott Foster here. Hold on. We got to bring this up, man. I'm sorry. Was not pissed, just disappointed with most of day 3C. I might be willing to improve that grade if they use that three-way. They got that third. They got to pick someone up in a trade. All right. Come on. You don't honestly believe, let's be honest, you don't honestly believe that the Jets 2024 draft class was a C. And if I'm wrong, let me know. But you cannot tell me objectively that this was a C draft. You can't. They solidified their offensive line with Olu Fashanu. They have taken the tackle of the future that they can trust to start right away, unlike Carter Warren, and they got it while adding a fourth and a fifth round pick. Then in the third round, they trade up without having to give up any future assets for a receiver that is expected to be Deebo Samuel reincarnate. If they get Deebo Samuel reincarnate out of Malachi Corley, how is this a C draft? And then you bring it back and you say, okay, in the fourth round, they take Braylon Allen, a great pass protecting running back and a guy that can get 4 yards a carry in the scheme that fits his talent. He's going to play right away. And in the fourth round, you picked up a third. That doesn't happen. There's one other team that traded a fourth round pick and got a third. That traded an overall 100 pick to a top 100 pick. And that's the Philadelphia Eagles. Take a look at their draft grade and tell me if they got a C. And then, because I'm going to break this down the whole way, Jordan Travis in the fifth round. A project of a quarterback that could have gone as high as the first round due to his skill set had it not been for a gruesome leg injury. No one knows what we're getting out of Jordan Travis. No one knows, in fairness. But if we're talking about a project quarterback, is this not the kind of guy that you want to learn behind Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor? Is that not the kind of project you want? Did you want Michael Pratt, who significantly worse college tape, has even worse of an arm than Jordan Travis, and does not have his anticipation or accuracy? If we're looking at a project quarterback who the Jets were smart to take this year, Jordan Travis was the best situation, and you got him in the 5th round without giving up future assets again. And I'll be fair. Let's say the Isaiah Davis pick doesn't work out, and let's say that it's an unnecessary double dip into a position not of great value. Let's say that was the case. The very next round, who did they take? The CFL Rookie of the Year, CFL All-Rookie team, whatever it was, but they took a corner and a safety. You provided depth in the secondary after losing Bryce Hall in free agency and potentially losing DJ Reed in free agency next year. And after all of that, you have to add in the undrafted free agents, the Leonard Taylors, the McGregors of the world, this defensive line duo that in college football was dominant. Completely dominant. Leonard Taylor should have gone in the 4th round, and you got him for $200,000 as an undrafted free agent. You want to say that this draft is a B? I'll disagree. I think it was a lot better, but I would understand. Some people aren't really high on a 5th round running back, especially when you double dip for it in the 4th round. But entering the 2024 NFL draft, the needs of the Jets were pass catcher, offensive line depth, running back, secondary, and a project quarterback. Olu Fashanu is your offensive lineman. Malachi Corley is your receiving target. Braylon Allen is your bruiser of a running back. Quantez Stiggers, key. These guys, quality depth in the secondary, helpful on special teams. And then your quarterback of the future, your project being Jordan Travis. They solved all their needs. Anything less than a B is disingenuous. The Jets knocked this draft out of the park. They knocked it out of the park. And the only reason why people would argue against that is because they didn't like what they did in the 1st round over the likes of Brock Bowers and trading up for Romeo Odunze. But if you get Odunze, you push the best offensive line draft class of the decade away. Instead of fixing your offensive line depth for good, trading up for Odunze would not have helped you. It wouldn't have helped you because you need offensive line help. Ultimately, I think objectively, this draft is an A-. You want to hit hard on the double running back? Perfectly fine. But they solved all the problems they had with high-value players. What more do you want? What more do you want? This was I think this was Douglas's second best draft of his life. Behind the 2022 class. And he had 3 cracks in the 1st round. He got value at every position of need. He got players of upside at every position of need. There is nothing you can take away from this draft other than Jets are ready to go. Jets are ready to go. They've got the defensive line. They've got the linebackers. They've got the secondary. Their offense is far better than it was last season. What more do you want? What more do you want? Appreciate all of you guys for jumping on. Want to end that there. Love all of you guys for jumping on. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to the channel. All help is appreciated. We're going to try a couple of new things with clips we're working on with Dane. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be back on Wednesday, 5 o'clock. Same time, same place. Appreciate all you guys for jumping on. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Beautiful day in Bayside and New York City. Have a great day, guys.